Welcome you to the regular meeting of the Planning and Transportation
Recording in
Commission.
progress.
This Wednesday, April 26th. And may we please have the roll call, Ms. Dow?
Yes. Chair Suma,
Present?
Vice Chair Chang,
Here.
Commissioner Aiken. Commissioner Heckman is absent. Commissioner Liu. Commissioner Rectal. Commissioner Templeton. Present. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And before we get started this evening, Commissioner Rectal will be here. He's just a few minutes late. And I wanted to welcome our newest members, Commissioner Liu and Commissioner Aiken. Thank you so much and congratulations. And also, of course, to Commissioner Templeton, who was reappointed. So we're all back together. So a little round of applause. And with that, we will get started and with our regular business this evening. And that would be if we have anybody who would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, either in the room or out in Zoom land on the phone.
There's no in-person speakers and I don't see any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you for that. We will move on to city staff with agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
We have no changes for today's agenda.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And then if you have a director's report, we can move on with that. And I'm not sure who else is here from staff who would like to, but why don't you start with Ms. French?
Sure, yeah, we can start and likely we have Rafael Rios on deck to report out on any transportation items. Oh, okay. Are you up? Okay. So we actually have somebody live from Office of Transportation, Ripon, who can give any updates or answer some questions on the transportation matters. I have not prepared anything for tonight, but as you know, May 8th is a big day coming up where just again, recall, especially, well, the new folks also are aware that May 8th is a day where we're having a joint meeting with the council. We haven't done this in years. So all of you all will be sitting up on the dais somehow, 12 people. At least it's better than last time we did it when there were 9 council members and 7 commissioners. So squeeze in, maybe have to share some iPads or something. So that's May 8th. And we're working fast and furious to bring that together to this momentous day where we're asking for adoption of the housing element. Let's see, and then we have adjusted, it may not reflect it in this week's packet, but we have made adjustments looking forward to representation with now a full commission on future meetings to represent Planning Commission at City Council. So you'll see that in your packet for May 10th.
Okay.
Assignments.
Thank you. Is that everything?
That's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else on staff want to?
Good evening, Honorable Commissioner and the rest of the commissions. Ripon Bhatia, Senior Engineer with Office of Transportation. Philip and Rafael was not able to make it, but the brief update about the transportation projects is that Public Works is continuing to do progress on the Charleston Arrested Railroad Corridor, working on the Wilkie signal and switching out the controllers that were temporarily placed. So there's work in progress, and just wanted to keep that information flowing. So thank you.
If you could just introduce yourself, because I don't think all the commissioners know your name. So
my name is Ripon Bhatia, Senior Engineer, and I'm in Office of Transportation. Work on grade separation projects primarily, and other capital improvement projects that may be related to transportation.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Do commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Templeton?
Thanks for coming, Mr. Bhatia. It's nice to see you again. I was aware that we had some work being done in our district on El Camino, though I know we don't own El Camino. There were some potholes being filled. Are you able to provide me updates on the status of the Caltrans work that's happening in our city?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Templeton. With regards to the El Camino Real project, there has been ongoing coordination with Caltrans in discussing their major capital improvement projects, but their ongoing maintenance, we don't get regular updates on their potholing, filling, and repairs. But maybe perhaps Raphael or Philip may have an update to that, and we can certainly share with you if there's some update available.
Okay, thank you. So we don't know if there's going to be more. I know they did some work, but El Camino's long. So I'd love to know if they're getting down to other parts of it. So if you are able to find the follow-up or something, please send it out. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? And we should also, for the record, mention that Commissioner Rekdal has joined us.
I'll have just one more thing, and I didn't mention May 10th. Just remember, we have 2 meetings that week. So May 10th, we will have the CIP report. As well, we're going to have an adjustment to the bylaws. You may remember, those of you who were here, voting for chair and vice chair. But now we have new commissioners, and so we're going to bring bylaws forward that fix the problem in the bylaws about when these things happen, and we will have a vote again for chair and vice chair on that date, May 10th.
Okay, thank you for that. And then unless there's any other questions, we will go ahead to our first item, which is a study session on train quiet zones.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Again, Ripon Bhatia, Senior Engineer with the Office of Transportation.
Mr. Bhatia, could you just speak really close to the mic because these mics don't pick up the sound so well? Thank you.
Sorry about that. Sure. Tonight, we are bringing forward this quiet zone study at Palo Alto Avenue and Elma Street Crossing for your review and consideration. This study was conducted in collaboration with City of Menlo Park and included 4 intersections, 4 crossings in Menlo Park and 1 crossing in the city of Palo Alto. The only one that we had included in the study was at Palo Alto Avenue and Elma Street Crossing. The services of the consultant, Kimley Horn and Associate, was procured to conduct the study, and the members of the consultant team are here with us today. Peter available today and will be helping us making the presentation and I will now request them to come on and Peter to introduce themselves and begin the presentation.
Yeah, good evening. This is Peter Meyerhofer with Kimley Horn. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great.
Hello, this is Brent Ogden with Kimley Horn.
Thank you.
All right. Should we go into our presentation?
Yes, please go ahead, Peter. So next slide.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just, we've got a few slides to share with you today. We're going to walk through what a quiet zone is, the quiet zone basics, the specifics of this particular quiet zone feasibility study analysis we're looking at that entails both Menlo Park and Palo Alto crossings, the process we're going through for the quiet zone, and then the work done to date and the work that's remaining to fully implement the quiet zone. Next slide. So just to give everyone kind of a brief background on why we want to do a quiet zone. Railroads are regulated by the Federal Railroad Administration, the FRA, requires train operators to sound their horns as they approach areas where the railroad intersects a roadway, so a railroad crossing. The train horn acts as a fail-safe in the event the warning devices, gates, and bells don't work or don't prohibit a person or vehicle from entering the crossing. The train horn is supposed to be loud enough to catch attention. Train horns are required to sound at specific volumes, generally 96 to 100 decibels, so pretty loud. In addition, they have to sound their horns beginning 20 seconds prior to entering a given crossing. Next slide. A quiet zone is a section of a railroad or railroad corridor in which the train operator does not need to sound the train horn as it approaches the crossing. So for a quiet zone to be implemented, a crossing or a set of crossings must meet certain safety thresholds as determined by the FRA. So most crossings would not qualify for a quiet zone in their current state. So upgrades are needed to make them safe enough that a horn does not need to sound. This is achieved by what we call supplemental safety measures, SSMs, at the crossing, and ensures that the quiet zone risk index for the crossing or the set of crossings qualifies under the FRA guidelines to be a quiet zone. So essentially increasing through added safety infrastructure, making it above what FRA considers safe enough to be a quiet zone. So by adding this infrastructure, basically we're doing an analysis to show that a particular crossing or a set of crossings are safer with these added improvements than they were previously when a horn was sounding. If that makes sense. Next slide. So where we're at with in phase one of this study, which is what we're doing now, we started with agency coordination. That includes obviously the cities, City of Menlo Park, City of Palo Alto, Caltrain, California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, the FRA, and UPRR as well. And so, we are also going to be going through, we went through actually conceptual design and did a safety analysis. We've been undergoing public outreach, including kind of talking with you all tonight to solicit input. And then we're going to summarize all of our findings, including the design, the field diagnostic meeting we had with the stakeholders, in a final report. And then the next phase would include actual taking the conceptual designs already produced and bought off by all the stakeholders and creating final design construction documents and obviously constructing it in the field. And during that process, we'll also go through permitting with CPC and Caltrain. And with CPC specifically, we're talking about doing a grade crossing modification permit, a GO88B. So, okay. So like this, obviously Caltrain, they're the owner operator in the corridor. Union Pacific also has operating rights, so they were included or at least invited to the field diagnostic meetings and a review of design. Caltrans, FRA, and the municipalities, of course. And so those agencies have all been a part of the process to date in looking at both in the field and the conceptual design. Next slide. So the Menlo Park Palo Alto Quiet Zone being discussed tonight would span about 1.5 miles. This entire corridor includes actually 4 crossings in the city of Menlo Park and 1 crossing in Palo Alto, being the Palo Alto Alma Street crossing. And so we'll get into specifics of each of these, but the entire crossing would be 1.5 miles if we were to implement all these together as one quiet zone. And specifically the crossings for Menlo Park, just for reference, would be at Encinal, Glenwood, Oak Grove, the Menlo Park Caltrain Station, and then Ravenswood. So, okay. So here's just kind of a brief look at the 5 different crossings. The conceptual design phase involved engineers designing proposed improvements for each of the 4 roadway crossings included in Menlo Park, as well as the crossing with Palo Alto. The crossings in Menlo Park generally include installing 4 quad gates, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. For the Palo Alto crossing, however, a 4 quad gate system is not required, rather just median improvements essentially, which are much less costly, thankfully, for the city. So, okay, fine. So the safety improvements focus on implementation of a 4 quad gate system, raised medians, a sidewalk realignment, and refreshing roadway striping and signage. So, the 4 quad gate system essentially prohibits cars from driving around gates that are in the down position and moving onto the tracks. It essentially creates a sealed barrier across the roadway to protect against crashes during train actuation. Raised medians designed high enough that a standard vehicle wouldn't want to drive over it acts in a similar manner to a 4-quad gate system. It essentially prevents vehicles from driving on the wrong side of the road to move around the down gates. So this safety measure has specific criteria attached to it that made it infeasible for the Menlo Park crossings, unfortunately, but it is feasible for the Palo Alto crossing. The sidewalks were often realigned to make for a more streamlined path of travel across the railroad tracks. And generally this, again, is required when you're installing the 4-quad gate system. So all of the crossings too, we do anticipate, minor roadway striping refreshment and updated signage as well on the approaches. So here's just another graphic illustration of the 4-quad gate system, how it essentially seals the rail corridor from vehicle traffic and potential vehicles to drive around the activated gates. The 4-quad gate system is a type of supplemental safety measure that reduces the risks associated with a crossing per FRA guidelines. And again, these measures are only being proposed in Menlo Park crossings, but just for reference. Okay. So here's specific to the Palo Alto Alma Street crossing. Raised medians, designed, again, have to be high enough, 8 inches, that a standard vehicle wouldn't want to drive over it. So, what you'll see at this proposed crossing improvements for Palo Alto is we will need to actually reconstruct the median slightly higher so that can meet that threshold for FRA. And again, the fact that we have this median here, we have to extend it as well to meet requirements of FRA. But the good news is this type of improvement is much, much cheaper than putting a 4-quad gate system in. So, and essentially does the same purpose. Four-quad gates, though, you're going to have to do additional realignment of the sidewalks, just to accommodate the added infrastructure that you're putting in. And then when you do that, you have to put added grade crossing panels in as well. So it's kind of a spiraling effect of required improvements when you're adding gate infrastructure. So, next slide. Some typical, signage and striping that's required at all the crossings, the railroad, the crossbucks, 2-track signs, things like that. There's probably a dozen or so different types of signage that we will either have to replace or add in. But in the grand scheme of things, relatively minor improvements for these crossings. Okay. So here's a conceptual design of the Palo Alto Alma Street crossing. Those items in green are actually, existing infrastructure that we'll be leaving in place. The majority of the work at this crossing is going to be, as discussed, is going to be reconstructing the median to full height as well as extending it to the required length for FRA requirements. So again, we'll have some striping and marking as well. And 4-quad gates are not going to be necessary here. So there won't be any reconfiguration of the sidewalk either. So we started public outreach a couple of months ago, received some good input from the different cities, and any feedback about these crossings and their improvements is encouraged. What we want to take all this in, and what we receive will be included in our designs that we'll be finalizing, as well as the final report that we'll be issuing to the cities for the quiet zone. So, okay. So final report will be the last phase of this, the phase 1 of work, I guess you could say. It's going to be kind of summarizing the concept designs, the feedback from the different stakeholders and the general public. It'll provide the recommendations and concept design for each crossing, cost estimates as well, and a timeline of implementation. So to complete the quiet zone certification. So as talked about at the very beginning of our presentation, the next phase would be, completing final design and construction documents. And during that process would also require permitting, particularly with CPUC and Caltrain, soliciting funding for the different crossings, and then, of course, construction. And at the very end, once it's constructed, finalizing with FRA and having a certified quiet zone. So. Rupan?
Thank you, Peter. So in conclusion, we'll say that the next steps of permitting and design will initiate soon after the approval of the concept plan and completion of the final study, which we are anticipating in the fall of this year, going to the city council and getting that approval. The construction cost estimate for this particular crossing is about 150 grand. And we are hoping to reach out to a few funding opportunities to see if we can qualify and meet the requirements, but we'll definitely not delay and continue to move forward with the design of the project and proceed with construction without further delay. We are hoping that the project this particular construction for the median island improvements, seeking approvals as well as getting the permitting and bidding, and if based on the normal, assuming reasonable times for the approval and procurement of the services and bidding of the project will take about 18 to 24 months. And also to add to that is that this is our first of the 4 crossing. So as soon as the concept plans are adopted by the city for this particular crossing, we will have the lessons learned and get to work on the other 3 crossings that we have in the city. And we'll look into the quiet zone study for those 3 crossings as well. So this concludes our staff report, and we'll be happy.
Going to allow commissioners to ask questions, clarifying questions, and then I think we can go to the public and then come back for our discussion, if that sounds all right. So do I have any questions? Commissioner Templeton?
I have questions, but I'm not sure which segment they go in. I'll start, and if you want me to hold them for later, just let me know. Thank you for this report. It's very interesting, and I'm glad to hear that we're piloting and going to learn lessons before we do the other 3, but that's very, very promising. And so we'll get a chance to experience what's happening in Menlo Park and Palo Alto Avenue. My question is just clarification. We are calling this quiet zone, but maybe I missed it. If it's there, forgive me, just let's point it back out. But with the rail crossing guards, we'll still have bells, but not the horn, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And Peter, if you want to add to anything there, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's correct. The horns from the trains are much louder though than the bells on the gate assemblies.
That's fair. I just want to make sure as word is going to get out, people will be very excited, and some people for different reasons than others. So I live far enough away from the crossing that I can't hear the bells, just the horn. But there are people who might hear quiet zone and think the bells will go away for them. So we should just be really clear about it. Thank you.
And I'd like to add that the engineers still have the option to sound the horn if there's any safety concerns. So they're not prohibited from sounding, but routine horns will be that they will not have to sound.
But still, then it'll get your attention instead of being something that happens at 2 a.m. Anyway, appreciate that.
Commissioner Chang and then Commissioner Rekdal.
So just a clarifying question, the Palo Alto crossing was included in the study just because of its proximity to the Menlo Park crossings, correct? Given the kind of 20-second or 15 to 20-second timeframe rule, is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
That is correct, but I will say that you can actually implement ahead of time a smaller quiet zone just for the Palo Alto Alma Street crossing in advance of the crossings in Menlo Park, if you so choose.
Right, yeah, just to make it real clear here, this is Brent Ogden, the whistle post, which is what is placed by the wayside, that the train engineer sees that whistle post, that's when they're supposed to pull the cord. It's a quarter of a mile ahead of the crossing. So the nearest crossing in Menlo Park, if you back up a quarter of a mile from there, you're sort of like near the Safeway store in El Camino in that area. So, you know, it could be completely separate what happens in Palo Alto and what happens in Menlo Park.
Commissioner Rekdal?
Yeah, can you go over the approval process? Who has to approve this and what's the timeline on that?
Peter,
Yeah.
would you want to answer this question? I mean, I can add later on.
Yeah, so from the California Public Utility, the CPUC, governs all crossings in the state of California, number one. So anytime you have any modification to an act grade or a grade separation, you have to go through a CPUC approval of those, proposed improvements. So for these crossings in Palo Alto, Alma Street crossing, we are doing improvements within the rail corridor that would require a GO 88B grade modification permit. That is not as lengthy as a permit, for instance, putting in a new crossing. So it's a couple months of approval process from the time you submit it to them. And it's probably a couple months to prepare that as well. So it takes 4 to 6 months to probably go through that approval process with CPC. However, that can be done concurrent to design, and so that's the good news. And design itself will take at least 6 to 9 to 12 months as well to go through the different phases. So you have the CPUC approval process is number one. Obviously, you need to get certified with FRA at the end too. But in the phase one, we already did a field diagnostic meeting with CPUC, with FRA, with the cities, with Caltrain. And so the concept designs that we have are sharing in front of you today have already been essentially signed off by the stakeholders. So it's really at this point from approval process, just getting the final design done and getting these things on paper for the CPUC GO 88B application. So that's actually a big hurdle, because oftentimes with some crossings you have let's say a lot of disagreement on what the required improvements should be, and that can oftentimes take a lot of back and forth to get consensus. But in this case, we have consensus, which is a big hurdle. So CPUC, FRA, and of course, Caltrain being the owner operator, they're going to have to sign off as well. So.
Okay, that's very good news.
Yeah, I wanted to add that Caltrain also needs to review and approve it, because they would need to provide services during the construction for flagging and other situations. So having a service agreement or some kind of review process with them is also a key step.
And the cities pay for this all unless we get external funding.
Correct.
And so Caltrain is not kicking any money for this. This is purely the cities.
Yeah, quiet zones are in the interest of the community from the local perspective, and it is to be paid for by the local agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, a kind of abstract question. So if I got it right, you said we would wait probably 18 to 24 months, finish this project, and then move on to the other projects. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And, like, what do we learn or what do we get if we wait?
I'd like to clarify that, no, we are not waiting for 18 months to start. Soon after the city council approves a concept, then we start and design of the Palo Alto Avenue crossing, and at the same time initiate the quiet zone study procurement for the consultant for that phase of work for the other crossings.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I had a question about, I think that somebody said that Palo Alto could do its one crossing that's being sort of put in with these Menlo Park crossings. We could do that on our own separately. Would there be an advantage in terms of the timeline, or maybe even the expense, how we apply for grants of doing it separately from the Menlo Park ones, or are we too far along, or does that, I wouldn't want to hurt Menlo Park, but I was just wondering if there was some advantage.
So the advantage is that we can implement the quiet zone for our community at Palo Alto Avenue crossing by itself, separately from, we are not tied up with the Menlo Park. So you can do a one quiet zone for the entire 1.5 miles, which includes all 5 crossings as one project, or you can do 2 separate one. Menlo Park can do their own, and we can do ours separately. So, but the advantage is that because their project is much complex and much more expensive, they will look for funding. I believe their estimate is about $2 million for each crossing. And so they have to wait and look for funding. And in the meantime, we would be able to benefit our community by putting the quiet zone for that time. So that's the benefit.
Okay, so there is an advantage for this one crossing at Palo Alto to piggyback with Menlo Park.
No, so but backing with Menlo Park would mean it will be delayed until they do their work, which we do not anticipate them to be doing right away for the fact that they are very complex.
Interest in quiet zones as well. So I'm just interested in exploring with my colleagues and with staff, whether it might be easier to just do our Palo Alto quiet zone all at one time. But I don't know, but.
Oh, you mean the entire Palo Alto?
Yes.
So the other 3 crossings, we believe that because they are in close proximity to the signalized intersections, they will be more complex and expensive, and we could benefit and do Palo Alto Avenue at this time, move forward with that, and it will not hurt in any way because we are moving forward, and the cost of this improvements for this particular crossing is not significant, or they are not kind of similar improvements for the crossings. And we believe that by forefronting the improvements at Palo Alto Avenue crossing, there's no significant cost savings or by lumping it with other crossings.
Okay, I think I understand. Commissioner Templeton?
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking for more clarification, Chair, because it's confusing because of the name of the street, right? Palo Alto Avenue. So I'm going to reiterate what I think I heard, and Mr. Bhatia can correct me. So the study session that we were just presented with included Palo Alto Avenue and a bunch of Menlo Park stuff. That's enough for us to go to council to get the concept approved. Once we have approved from council, you're anticipating that we can do 2 things at once: move forward on Palo Alto Avenue and kick off another new study session for the other crossings in Palo Alto. Is that right?
I just like to make a minor clarification.
Please, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
not study session, but a new quiet zone study.
Thank you. I knew it had study in there somewhere. Okay, so a new study like we saw tonight will be for our other 3 crossings. So we'll be able to move forward implementing the one and studying the others at the same time, which should reduce the time to approval, should it be approved.
Correct.
Okay, great. It's complicated, but thank you. You can tell we're all very interested in this. Thank you.
If there are no other questions from commissioners, I think we should go to members of the public. Ms. Dow, do we have?
Yes, we have 3 raised hands on Zoom. First one is Josh Orenberg. If you can unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I think so. Speak a little bit more.
Okay. I know Ripon, I bug him all the time. My name is Josh Orenberg. I am the main representative of the 101 Alma community. That's the building, the big medium rise, I guess, across the train tracks from Stanford Shopping Center. And I just want to say a couple real quick things. You know, we have over 200 people signed a petition I made for the quiet zone. And I represent, you know, at least 200 residents in the building, and most people are very supportive of this. And, you know, I wanted to thank everybody for their time, energy, and effort. And we are thrilled to see progress on the quiet zone finally happening. And we anxiously await the completion of the project. So that's all I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Orenberg. Next speaker.
Next one is Nielsen Buchanan.
Good evening. I think you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I also live in the neighborhood about 2 blocks away. I'm have a little bit of hearing loss at my age of 78, but I still can hear the trains, particularly at night, the freight train that runs through. I've had an inactive role in this. I've been helping, coaching the residents that are closer to the grade crossing, both in Palo Alto and Menlo Park. And I too would like to thank city staff for doing an excellent job of pursuing this issue with all the different hurdles between the interagencies. And just summarize, thank you and for being part of that process. Now we have to wait and see as it goes through what's under Palo Alto's control and goes on through the sort of called interagency approvals. I'm optimistic. I'm anticipating the best outcome, a little bit wary about what could go wrong, but I don't see it happening as the discussion was presented tonight. I think this is a great opportunity for model planning on our tougher issues of funding, grade crossings, and how are we going to get the train to even run, all the interagency problems with public transit. So I will like to come back at an open communication time to talk about how valuable this one project is. So I don't even know the staff below Philip Cami, but I thank all of you that have been doing that. And I thank Philip for shepherding this through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan.
And next one is Adrian Brandt.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Thank you. I encourage you to just go ahead with Palo Alto Avenue. There, as staff said, there's no advantage whatsoever to waiting. You are extremely fortunate there. At $160,000, you're paying about 8% of the cost of what a single crossing in Menlo Park is going to cost. Those are running at $2 million each because of all the crossing gates that they'll be replacing. Turns out they're going to have to replace, I think the presentation covered this, most of the existing crossing gates because standards have changed and then add additional ones. And so you're extremely fortunate. If you wait for Menlo Park, you'll be unnecessarily delaying for years because they are not sure where they're going to find the money to do their project, even for the 2 crossing option. As I encourage them and all cities to do is to try to see if we can get money from the High Speed Rail Authority using the same logic where they funded 1/3 of the electrification because they need electrification to reach San Francisco via the Caltrain line. That same logic, they used what's called a bookends funding from Prop 1A. That same logic applies to doing quad gates or any kind of improvements. I know you're not looking for quad gates at this particular crossing, but at the other 3, you probably will need them in all likelihood. And the High Speed Rail Authority's EIR, which has been approved for the peninsula, includes and requires quad gates that they will be building at their expense when High Speed Rail comes to the peninsula. So by Palo Alto or any city putting in quad gates now for purposes of getting a quiet zone qualified, you are essentially unburdening High Speed Rail of a future expense that they are absolutely guaranteed to have. So there's every reason for them to reimburse or even advance the funding now out of the Prop 1A bookends funding. So that's something I encourage all cities to go after. The other point I'll point out, Carrie Templeton asked about the bells. The horns are required to be 96 to 110 decibels. That's several orders of magnitude louder than the bells. And there are crossings, quiet zone crossings I've seen in this country where the gates come down and the bells actually stop ringing when the gates are in the lowered position. They only ring while the gates are moving. And truly, I just want everybody to be very comfortable about the safety of this. Caltrain does not have a drive around problem, and thankfully has almost no accidental deaths. All the deaths on the Caltrain line, essentially, I mean, with very few exceptions, are suicides, which have nothing to do with safety and occur despite copious horn blowing, just like on the 45-mile smart line in the North Bay. They have the same problem, and they have quiet zones the entire length. And as for speed of implementation, I think you should try to maybe consult with Petaluma or any of those cities up there that did it very quickly and expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more speakers?
No, that's all our raised hands.
Okay, thank you to the speakers, and we'll take it back to the Planning Commission for discussion, or if somebody's ready to make a motion, we can do that too. You're right, it's a study session, thanks. But we still should give direction to staff. So I see that Commissioner Reckdahl would like to go first.
Yeah, someone who lives close to a rail crossing, this is a really good idea. But I'll try to be impartial here. I really want to understand what additional risk, if any, we have. I mean, we have a kind of belt and suspenders. The crossing arms come down, and we have the whistle. So if that whistle goes away and we have a gate malfunction, we're not protected anymore. We're not as protected. Do we have any idea, when you look at the statistics across America, how many of the accidents are caused by gate malfunctions? Seems like gates are fairly reliable, but sometimes they malfunction. So do we have any numbers on that?
I don't think we have the numbers for that, but what I would say is if the gates malfunction, one thing that Caltrain would have to do is reduce their speeds, and at the same time they would have to whistle, blow the whistle. So they may not fall in the same category if their gates don't function properly. So but, Brent may be able to add some additional information there.
Well, that's correct. I mean, the fallback, if the gates don't operate, is they blow the horn. And they would probably get someone out to flag the crossing as soon as possible.
So are the locomotives or the engineers in the locomotive, are they informed when the gates malfunction? Is that automatic, or is that someone has to report it and someone has to call it in and then they get radioed?
There's usually a signal that the engineer can see that lets them know that the crossing system has been activated. Usually that means that the gates are going to come down, because the gates are designed, the way gates are designed is if the power fails, they drop. So they're fail safe in that regard.
Okay. Do we have any stats on how many car accidents we have in Palo Alto, car train accidents?
At Palo Alto Avenue Crossing?
Or just in general in Palo Alto?
No, I don't have the numbers handy, but we do have the FRA website does provide that information.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's information that FRA has that has a direct impact on the rating system we talked about on what's required at different crossings for improvements to make it a quiet zone, and crash history is one of those variables.
Okay.
Yeah, we can pull up the plan and the collision history from their information, but I don't remember off my.
Okay, and so then how does Palo Alto Avenue differ from the other three crossings that we have? So when we go down the road and we want to do the quiet session, is it because there's signals right nearby? Does that change the?
Yes. So if there is any access driveway or an intersection nearby, it changes the equation. Also, the volumes of the traffic as well as the pedestrian volume is also taken into consideration. Collision history is also another factor. So all those factors are considered into the evaluation of the intersection of the crossing to determine what the SSM or the safety measures that will be required in order to be replacing the whistle or the horns on the locomotive.
Does that just mean we have more?
I would say it's more hoops to jump through, like Menlo Park. They have quad gates requirements, more likely that would be additional requirements in order to meet the measures that would be required in order to meet the requirements for the quiet zone. But Brent is our expert. He is the one who has written one of the participants in the rulemaking for the quiet zone on the federal level. So maybe he can add to any information that may be available.
What particularly were you looking for?
For the other intersections, which are
Well, I haven't looked at those yet, so it's hard to say. But I mean, I think it was indicated before, if they have traffic signals that are adjacent, you're going to be replacing the signal house probably and replacing all the gates, and you're going to be up into that multi-million-dollar category per location.
Okay, but if we have that multi-million, then it's still high likelihood that we would get passed, or is there just more uncertainty too?
You mean whether it will be approved?
Yeah.
If authorized, so there's authorized safety measures that FRA is written into the rules, one of which is long medians and the other of which is exit gates, which is the approach that Menlo Park is taking. If those features are provided, then approval is essentially guaranteed.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Templeton?
Thank you, Chair. I thought Commissioner Rectal's questions were very good. I want to change to ask it in a slightly different way, which I think you will have the answers for. I hope you will have the answers for. When early in the presentation, you said that these crossings will be the only way we can replace the existing safety features is if we replace it with something that has more safety. And I guess my interpretation of what Commissioner Rectal was asking is when you assess the safety of the intersection or the crossing, are you including only when it's perfectly functioning, or are you including some risk for the likelihood that the safety features that would be implemented might fail? In other words, like, are you saying 99% of the time it works great, it has some small percentage of failing, and even with those things combined, it's safer than what we currently have? Is that what you're saying?
The median is a civil improvement. I mean, once it's built, so it is not subject to failure.
And that's the only thing we have to be concerned about with Palo
at that
Alto
location.
crossing.
At that location.
That clears it up. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Chang?
My question is regarding what happens at this intersection with respect to grade separation. It's a very low cost, so that's really good. And related to what our last Publix commenter spoke to, it doesn't seem like, we would get immediate benefit from our 150,000 approximate expenditure. So it seems like a relatively low cost for a good benefit. But what would happen at that, or what's being contemplated at that intersection with respect to grade separation? What's the latest, I guess?
The Palo Alto Avenue crossing is currently on hold. We have 3 other crossings that are currently in progress at the conceptual design phase. And once we move into the next phase, we are anticipating that Palo Alto will move into review of the alternatives and development, as well as consideration for the next phase of conceptual plan development.
Yeah, so based on all of that, I guess I would say that I think we should go ahead and move forward with this because it's a very low cost and a pretty significant benefit, I think. So I thank you guys for the report. Thank you for bringing this forward. It seems like it's like one of those rare instances where it just makes so much sense and there's not really a lot of downside. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
I did look up the collision history at Palo Alto Avenue. There were 2 collisions that were recorded in the last several decades. The most recent one was in 2010, resulted in $10,000 worth of damage to the highway vehicle, which apparently stopped on the crossing, probably it stalled. And then there was a one in 2003 that was also property damage to the vehicle, $3,000. So there have been no recorded injuries or fatalities at that location.
Thank you for that. And Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, I'm sure you're all well aware of this, but I'll also just shout out that cycling along Palo Alto Avenue is reasonably awkward, and the left turn where the median is being extended onto the other bike path is also a little bit exposed even right now. So yeah, I'll just shout out for consideration that we think about the left turn and we think about the width of the lanes and whether cars would be tempted to stray into the bike lane.
Thank you for that. I was also wondering if this would affect bikes, because there's a lot of bicycle traffic crossing there. So I think I agree with most of my colleagues that this is a good project and that people nearby have really wanted some relief from the horns. And it is a low cost project. And so it seems like a good thing to go forward with it. Anything you can do to improve the safety for bikes, I think particularly there, it is a little awkward, but it's maybe right at El Camino where it's awkward too. So I think it sounds like a very reasonable project to move forward with. And would any of my colleagues like to add something?
Nothing major, just that this is clearly of interest to a lot of people, and it seems like the benefit far outweighs the cost. Let's go for it.
Commissioner Templeton, I see your light again.
Just wanted to chime in since I didn't explicitly say it. Yes, this sounds awesome. I hope the council will do it.
So unless any of my other colleagues have more to add, I think staff has a good impression of how we feel about the project and moving forward with it. So thank you very much for all the work on this.
I'd like to thank the entire commission in helping us provide this feedback and supporting us in this project, and we'll move forward to other committees and commissions before going to the council. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our next item, which is a continuation of our discussion about our work plan here on the Planning Commission. So I think we'll start out with staff report.
Yes. Good evening, Amy French, Chief Planning Official. On March 29th, we had our Planning Director present as far as the accomplishments of the 2022-23 work plan and culled through the 18 projects goals from that plan. Next slide. The Planning and Transportation Commission provided direction and asked us to come back at this meeting. And so here we are. Last time there were discussions of perhaps thinking about the council's goals and objectives relevant to the Planning Commission's work. And then there was some direction provided. There was some of these things shown on the slide. So just briefly, the plan that's in the work plan for 2023-24 includes a brief list of accomplishments from the past work plan year. I have those on the screen and they're in the plan. Then we have the rearrangement of some of those goals from last time. We went from a numbering system, which the commission felt indicated some sort of arranged, designated, and here on this slide is kind of a visual representation to show how the goals with the numbers became the goals with the letters, and some of these merged. Noting as well that the commission felt that we had pretty much accomplished 5 of those goals, 4, 5, 6, 15, and 17. So those did not continue on, and some of these other goals were combined or tweaked, revised to be relevant to the coming year. So just again, in overview, Office of Transportation, who's here represented by Sylvia, as well as Ripon. They have goals A, G, H, I, and J in the plan. And the Planning and Development Services have B, C, D, E, F, K, L, and M. These are not in any prioritized order. One item to just mention, the housing element I was mentioning, it's been a big effort for us. We're nearing adoption, but we're still going to have to wait for certification and then implementation. So we have a number of projects ahead of us to work towards implementation. And then goal F is I split into two goals, which is F1 and F2. Basically, those are related to the years in which that state legislation was adopted. So the F1 piece of that F goal relate to the legislation passed in 2021, 22, and in effect now. We're working through that. And then the F2 is some items that are coming later that include actually legislation we're anticipating is going to come through the fall. And then we're going to have to hustle like we did with SB 9 last time and get some ordinances in a hurry. So then we have goal K, which is about the rental registry ordinance that the commission asked to put on the list. We have bird safe glass and dark skies put on the list. And then a catch-all for the comp plan policy implementation. We have existing comp plan policies that, we're in this period that stretches to 2031, and we're, methodically getting through all of those as we can. So that concludes the presentation that I have. And I don't know what would be helpful to the commission. If you want to ask questions of staff, I can put one of these slides on the screen again. Also, I have in the presentation, if you wanted to look at the council goals and objectives, I do have slides that show those.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Do my colleagues have questions? Yes, Commissioner Aiken.
Hi, is anything coming up with respect to San Francisco Creek that we will need to see?
If there's a current planning application that requires a Planning and Transportation Commission review, it could come to, if it's trying to think which section of the creek, whether it would require planning.
Which reach is involved?
What's that?
Which reach is involved?
Yes, which reach. So if it's not on the agenda, we haven't thought of it. But there is room, of course, in any plan year for current planning projects to come through. They're going to come through even if we didn't anticipate them.
Sure, just checking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that? Who is driving the creek work right now? So is that council directed, or is that or is it staff driven right now?
So I think what you're referring to is the stream side corridor.
No, I'm just talking in general, that both the bridges that we're looking at replacing. Well, JPA is just doing the Menlo Bridge, but the other bridge is just in Palo Alto. So,
well, the Public Works Department is in charge of any public, improvements in the public right of way. So
I'm wondering, is council driving the path forward on those bridges? Is staff working that?
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can reach out to our Public Works Director, and if you have a specific question, I'm happy to forward that.
I would like to have a crisp answer on what the path forward is and who are the decision makers that are driving the schedule. And there's a lot of people in town that would want it tomorrow. And what's the balance? Who's deciding the schedule?
Chair, may I ask a question to Commissioner Rectal?
Yes, please.
Would you want to clarify for staff which bridges, like Newell and Chaucer Street?
So the Pope Chaucer Bridge is JPA driven, but the Chaucer Bridge is Palo Alto. So I don't think JPA.
Newell?
I mean, Newell Bridge, I'm sorry, yeah. Newell Bridge is the one that's just Palo Alto.
And you're asking about the timing.
Yeah, so what are the next steps? Maybe that's a better answer. What are the next steps on those? And Is there anything that the commission can do to facilitate that?
Okay, I'll endeavor to return with a crisp answer the next meeting.
Colleagues, do we have other questions or observations? I mean, go ahead.
Ms. French, I've already sent you a note about this, and that's the question of the Lincoln Avenue Middlefield Road work plan. So I feel like that should be another item in the list in goal A.
So that's the road safety goal. I'll let Sylvia address that.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I thought it was actually on here. Let me check with our transportation engineering folks and see if we can add that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And so could you say what that is again, the Lincoln, the issue that you want to add?
Sure. I think probably all of us have seen the great letter from Jeff Brown that was in the public comments this time. And that this is a road safety issue at the intersection of Lincoln Avenue and Middlefield Road. Craig Young has been documenting this for years. And I know, I believe Mr. Rios is working on the work plan for that. But the last time I was in touch with him about that has been most of a year ago.
Okay, so it's to address the Lincoln Middlefield safety situation. Go ahead, Commissioner Chang.
Just to add to that, we did discuss it during our work planning meeting and at a prior PTC meeting when Mr. Rios was here, he had mentioned that work is being done and it will be coming to the commission at some point this year. So it makes sense to add it because it is something that's planned. Yep.
That makes good sense. Commissioner Templeton?
Thank you. I think it was probably an oversight because it definitely is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
I would add that we really need a discussion about collision areas in Palo Alto. Middlefield is notorious. This is not the only site intersection on Middlefield that has issues because how it occasionally lines up with the sun, and it makes it difficult for people driving down it to see people in the intersections. And we've seen incidents in Midtown as well, where the young boy was hit in the intersection in front of Walgreens. And so we need to talk about it. And this is, I know, I say it every time because I love you guys. I really want to have a good discussion about it because people, when we only can respond to incidents, we don't have all the information. We don't understand what are the most critical areas. Why are we prioritizing certain things over other things? And we need to understand that as a community. It's really terrifying when every other week we're having a child collide with a car. Thank you.
Comments? I don't think we need to at this point go through all the letters A through M one by one. So I'm just going to ask you for more comments. And I wanted to make one comment myself about goal L, which bird safe glass, dark skies ordinance, which is great, but I think it could be broadened to say bird safe construction. So it's just a little broader. And to really emphasize how high priority both L and M are for me personally, because they've been in the comp plan for a long time. So, and then I'm hearing that colleagues would like to add those two items to goal A. And do we have other, Commissioner Aiken and then Commissioner Templeton?
This may be more in the nature of a clarification for Project G parking programs. Does the commercial parking improvements include an update on capacity signage?
When you say, you mean like a sign that says how many
empty spaces are
I
available?
believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Templeton and then Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to back you up on goal L. I think the bird safe construction is an excellent way to put that. We do have other things that interfere with flight paths and safety of our wildlife. So I just want to endorse what the changes you suggested. Thank you.
Commissioner Liu.
Yeah, every instinct in my body says we should be ranking these goals more aggressively. We should be saying that road safety is clearly more important than bird safe construction, even though we would love to get all of this done. And I realize it's probably opening a big can of worms to actually try to group these into like tiers of priorities right now. Is there interest in this? And would that be like, would ranking these projects be helpful for staff?
I don't know, Sylvia, would you like to answer as far as for transportation, if ranking by suggestions would be helpful when this is brought to council?
I wonder if it would be helpful if I chimed in a little bit just with context, because I asked the same question. I think it was either during our pre-meeting or actually in our PTC meeting itself of Director Late, because we as a commission are a little bit different from some other commissions where a lot of our work is not, a lot of our work is reactionary. It's not of our choosing. So it's driven by applications, or it's driven by legislation, or it's driven by council directive. And so at least I think as a group, we had sort of decided that we sort of intentionally did not want to create an artificial prioritization, because we can't actually necessarily control that work. We did, however, in our discussion, emphasize that we all thought that road safety was very, very important. And I think that staff understands that. But that said, we did not say that this is our number one priority or anything like that, because the reality is, going at least for the next long while, we're going to be spending a lot of our time implementing housing element stuff. So I think I would love to, like in the corporate world, I would love to be able to make a prioritized list and then start at the top with the highest priority, but we don't get to do that, I think, is the reality. So council gets to do that more so than we do. And that's the challenge.
Did staff want to add to the ranking question or no?
And I think there's some leeway. In other words, for instance, the comp plan policy implementation. We have this period that extends until 2031 when the new comp plan would be start. So there is some wiggle room there. And it's probably no coincidence that I put that as M, even though they're not in order of appearance important, but there it is, the catch-all. So it's at the end, whereas A is the one that everyone thought was important. So we don't miss that one. We will do when we can, we will fit these things in when they don't have a time certain, like the housing element we're giving ourselves, or HCD is giving us basically deadlines and years in which we have to do some things. So I guess to that end, if there are some things that the commission would like to discuss as important, like the road safety, it would be interesting to hear. Whether we can go that way is another question.
Commissioner Templeton, and then I'll go back to you, Commissioner Liu.
Thank you. I also want to chime in about the prioritization. I acknowledge that you are desiring to rein in the chaos that might be our agenda over the next several years. I'm not sure it's productive. First of all, we might all never agree, right? And I'm not sure it's necessary because we do have ad hoc kinds of things come in to change our priorities over time. But what is useful about having this list, regardless of whether it's prioritized, is that we've all had a chance to express it's almost more of a values than a priorities. These are the things we think are resonating and on the minds of the public right now. And we need to reflect that and acknowledge that because people want to be heard. They want to talk about things that are on their minds and that matter, and that we're one of many channels to communicate with City Council about those needs and interests. So it doesn't need the structure, and we won't be able to utilize any kind of structure if we were to order them. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I could imagine some order we could impose, like some ranking of the things that are discretionary, but I agree that's probably getting too complicated for something that, as far as I understand, we realistically won't be referring back to like every few months.
Yeah, and we did cut a lot of things.
Yeah.
So what's left are it is the cream.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
Yeah. Maybe stirring the pot a little bit more with one last question about prioritization. On Project C, we listed out all the area plans. I remember in the previous meeting, we said that there was realistically we were only going to get to, I think, a few of these. And we were calling out vaguely priorities for these. And do we want to do anything more there? Would we actually want to call out now that one of these is more important than another?
So I think we have to rely on council direction for that, because council staff can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we don't really get to tell the council what our priority is on these coordinated area plans. And we expedite, we sort of make happen what they have time for. And it's also a matter of staffing and whether we get funding to do these. So there's a lot of balls up in the air besides what we think is the most important to which of these will get done. But I certainly think you should express, if you have strong opinions, I think you should express them. Now's the time. I don't know if it makes, I think it's kind of what Commissioner Templeton said. I don't think having us spend a lot of time prioritizing and ranking it will make any difference to what comes to us, because what comes to us is going to be what the council comes to us, what staff has time to do, and what there's funding for, just reality wise. So, but I think you should tell us what you think is really important.
I don't have like a strong prior here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know actually if council has given like direction on which one of these is most important or which ones to start with. And yeah, maybe I'll think offline and come back on what options we could have for actually prioritizing work within the things that, within the narrow scope that we actually do have. And I'll just think offline about that scope.
Okay, I think that would be good. I think you can see some hesitancy in the rest of us with prioritizing, because it's really hard to do. And it takes a lot of time. And in the end, I don't know that it will matter to us much, because what comes to us is going to come to us. But I would appreciate if you have brilliant thoughts about it. That's what we need.
Can I just add something really quickly? It's not to say that we shouldn't voice our opinions. We should voice our opinions. Yeah. I think what Commissioner Templeton and Chair Sumo were saying is that it's a lot of work for us as several individuals to come up with one prioritization that we have to vote on and agree on. That's difficult and very time consuming. Like, it will take hours. And then because it's not actually actionable nor useful, that it's not worth the time. That said, if you have particular if you think that particular area plans are particularly important, like I definitely have my own opinions and I have voiced them before, that is important to voice. And if you feel, if you feel particularly strongly about anything, you should always talk about it, as well as go speak to council members directly as a private citizen. So that's what I would say.
I don't know who was first, Commissioner Templeton and then Commissioner Rectal. It's still working. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Sorry, this is minor. I see value in your observation that the prioritization is a separate task from the generation of the list of goals. So that was the only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. Just since we're talking about it, and maybe we should just feel free to mention our priorities. I would like people to not have collisions with cars, bicyclists not have collisions with cars. And I'm gonna tell you, when I'm looking through this list, many of them address that, right? Our area plans address that. Our road safety addresses that. Our bike pedestrian improvement, plan improvement or update addresses that. So I'm really happy with this list. I think you guys did a great job of capturing our meandering thoughts and making us feel a little bit more focused, though maybe not quite focused enough, but we'll get there. And I would love to hear the, thread that ties these things together for the other commissioners, should you want to share. Thank you.
Thoughts, commissioners?
Yeah, it's, with these plans that we do, you try and figure out how does it add value? And I think prioritizing it, especially for us, I don't think is a good use of our time. To me, I consider it like a broad to-do list. And every few months, go back and look at this and say, is there anything I could do in this category? What happens? We get caught up in our day-to-day operations and all of a sudden 9 months, 12 months have gone by and we haven't done anything in half the categories. And so just periodically going back and saying, what can I do in here? What can I do there? And if you have some ideas on those, talk to the chair, talk to the mayor. And I think that's where the value is just to remind us what's important.
Comments? Oh, Ms. Starlack.
Thank you, Chair. I did want to call the commissioner's attention to the transportation element of the comprehensive plan that in policy T61 states that the city should continue to make safety the first priority of citywide transportation planning. And it also goes on to say prioritize pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile safety over motor vehicle level of service at intersections and motor vehicle parking. So that's the overall policy of one of our goals. And furthermore, policy T6.2 states pursue the goal of 0 severe injuries and roadway fatalities on Palo Alto streets.
Awesome. Thank you for reminding us of that. Commissioner Liu?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you, and that having those priorities baked in is really appreciated.
Comments or, now this is an action item, so we will need a motion. Is anybody ready to make motion? Oh, Commissioner Chang.
I would like to move that we approve the work plan with the suggested modifications. Let me see if I can recap them. Of adding to project goal A, the Lincoln Avenue and Middlefield project, adding a study of collision issues, and then modifying project goal L to read bird safe construction instead of glass.
Or glass slash.
Or bird safe glass slash construction.
Broadening it a bit.
And I think that was it that I captured.
Commissioner Templeton, do you have something else?
Yeah, I want to second it.
Oh, excellent. Would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, this is really good stuff. We should work on it.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement unless anybody else give a comment? No. We will go ahead and conduct the vote, please.
I can't remember. Did we take public comment, Chair?
Oh, I forgot about public comment. Sorry, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, we don't have any in person or Zoom.
I must have known that. Okay, so given that we have no public comment, I think we should go ahead and conduct the vote.
Okay. Commissioner Templeton,
Yes.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
Commissioner Aiken,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Chang.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have some minutes to approve. The first set of minutes is, let's see, draft verbatim and summary minutes of March 8th, 2023. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move we accept them or approve them.
Second.
Okay, then we can go ahead and our new colleagues won't vote on this since they weren't in those meetings. What? Yeah. Go ahead and conduct the roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Abstain.
Commissioner Aiken,
Abstain.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-2.
Thank you. We have another set of minutes to approve. That is minutes from where's the page? Draft summary minutes from March 29th. Do I have a motion and a second, please?
I move approval of the draft summary minutes, March 29th.
Second.
Okay, could we conduct the vote, please?
Commissioner Aiken,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Abstain.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Chair Suma,
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-2.
Thank you very much. That actually concludes our business for the evening unless we have any comments, questions, or announcements from colleagues. And Commissioner Chang, yes?
I just have a really quick announcement in case our new commissioners didn't receive the email from Adam Howard. The Mayfet Parade is taking place on Saturday, May 6th, and we're all invited to participate. And it's a really fun thing to walk in and participate in. I unfortunately can't make it myself this year as I have a conflict, but I did it last year. And we do have an RSVP deadline of April 28th to let Adam Howard know if we can make it. So I just wanted to remind us all to do that if we're interested in doing it. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that. Commissioner Templeton?
Thank you. I'll be quick. A constituent was asking me about bike paths on El Camino and if the city is working with Caltrans on designing those. I wondered if you knew. Since Mountain View has it and Los Altos has it. And we don't.
I believe more about this will be coming out, and I think city manager will be briefing council about this.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that I should get ahead of that.
Fair enough. I bet you'll let us know.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I once again want to congratulate and welcome our newest commissioners. Don't expect all the meetings to be this short. So I guess with that, we can adjourn.